You're listening to TFP, the fan's perspective.
Can you dig it?
All right. Did Timbaland just open Pandora's box? That's the question that we're exploring, and we're going to talk about today on TFP.
Yes, sir.
I'm your host, charlietrix, and I'm here with my brother,
Remy. What's good, everybody?
Remy is in the building. So, big topic today. We just wanted to talk a little bit about it because huge hip-hop fans here, lifelong hip-hop fans. We talk a lot about AI, and this story covers them both. Timbaland just came out. He is about to release his own artist. How does this qualify? Is he signs the AI artist? And
so we could kind of try to figure it out based on the Rolling Stone article I'll give you.
All right. Well, just to give you some solid detail, we'll have Remy read a little bit from the Rolling Stone article, and then we're just going to talk about some of the feedback and how we feel about it personally.
Yeah, so straight off of, this is from Rolling Stone. It's by the journalist Brian Hyatt. Its title is Timbaland's new artist is young, photogenic, and not human. A new startup launched by the producer is introducing an AI-generated artist, Tata. And just to read the first, the opening of it, legendary producer Timbaland has taken his fervent embrace of AI music production to a new level, launching a new AI entertainment company, Stage Zero, and an AI-generated artist, Tata, who will be dropping a debut single soon. Timbaland, who co-founded the company with his current creative partner Zaid Portillo and film producer Rocky Mudaliar, tells Rolling Stone he's had the idea for the venture since he began making music with generative AI platform Suno last year. I saw the path, he says, but I had to wait till everything caught up. So, they are literally creating this AI artist. I think the music is going to be generated probably using this AI platform Suno. And yeah, it's a new company, an AI entertainment company.
Yeah, so here's the weird thing. We spent a lot of time over this past year with all the advancements in AI, specifically in the music area. There's been like a lot of hack stuff that we've seen come out, and I guess the idea is that this feels like a cheat sheet, or it doesn't really honor the traditional artist who does the creativity part of actually writing out the rhymes and the lyrics, or creating the beats, or playing the instruments. So it does feel weird to me when I think about it on its face. I guess my first reaction to it was like, oh, why Timbaland? I guess I didn't want somebody I admired to be the first one to kick open that door. Because the main concern now for me is just, are we going to be flooded with just endless AI music now? And Spotify seemed like it was bad enough with bullshit music that gets flooded and drowns out, all the other artists on there.
Yeah.
So now is going to be even worse with the AI thing. So I don't know. I'm not. I also don't want to knock Timbaland on it. I love Timbaland, what he's done in the past. And some of the things I've heard what he was saying about how it's like getting a new tool, going from using the old school method to a new thing. And in that sense, I get it. I agree. AI's coming whether we like it or not. Well, you're way better off learning how to use it. That's one thing I'll give him props for is, if this does take off, he is going to be basically a pioneer in this style of doing it.
Well, there's
some
two
sense.
sides of it. This may take off. This may be a successful avenue. And then there's the question of, what does it leave for actual artists? Where does it leave artists? And what does it do in that lane? And maybe they don't crisscross as much as we think. Maybe they do have a major impact on each other. And I think my concern is with the impact it will have on artists. And there's also two parts of this discussion for where Timbaland's coming at it, because I have an old, this news came out 2 days ago. June 5th was when the article came out on Rolling Stone about the AI artist. But the work that Timbaland's been doing with Suno, however you pronounce it, is dates behind that. And people were skeptical then. And I think I see this interview. It's from it's a YouTube channel called No Labels Necessary, and it's called Timbaland shows how he's using AI to change the music industry forever. Part 2 is the one I'm looking at. It's like a 45-minute clip, and a lot of it involves Timbaland himself speaking about his vision and how he uses that tool, and it does sound like he's using it as a tool. And I came away from that part thinking that it was interesting, at least. It sounded like he's really going into it with an artist's intentions, but when then he wants to create his own, artists to perform AI, generated music is what it sounds like, with him, adding some bells and whistles. It takes a little bit of a different character because you're taking actual artists out of it. So like in the video I saw, he took a real artist's verse and song, and there was a beat and everything. He put it all together, played that, and then he punched it into the AI, and it gave him different versions of it. What would it sound like over this type of beat? What would it sound like over this type of beat? And he was able to kind of hear different approaches to the same sample. That was interesting to me. But then taking the artist out of it, just having a ghostwriter and an animated character, it's a little weird. And like, as far as they say, Tata is intended to be the first of many personas launched by the company, and the co-founders have dreams of the characters becoming virtual influencers and even starring in movies and TV shows. So it almost feels like they're replacing actors, artists, influencers, all these. They're trying to create a full-on AI replacement. And I'm curious where that goes, but I'm also curious what it does for those industries. Does it take leverage away from people who are already getting the shit end of the stick in the streaming world, for musicians particularly?
I think it does, because right now artists are having a tough time, especially independent artists, with the music business. And this, for the entire entertainment business, I feel like it adds another layer for the labels and for the entertainment companies rather than for the artists. Because if you can get a halfway decent, AI image or AI, whatever you want to call it, person to play a role in a movie, or stand, instead of having an artist, what do you have, a movie screen in the arena, or some kind of
Tupac hologram version,
some like hologram running around the stage, but that's also one less human doing that thing. And to be clear, as far as I know, every single AI model, the only reason they can do any of this is because they've took information from existing music and existing artists and people who did put the legwork in first. So this is almost like the ultimate biter, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
to some degree.
To me, the art is in the creative side of it, bringing something new to the table, bringing a new perspective, and AI is remixing old stuff. I think that's kind of the only way. It doesn't generate something new. It iterates, So like, that's where I have a concern on that. The quality of what comes out of it probably isn't going to be as good as, in my assumption, as what we can get when artists sit down in a studio and spend a lot of time to put one really great track out, or to put whatever. When an artist sits down and writes a really good book, AI is not writing that book. I haven't seen anything to convince me that AI is going to surpass the quality, but I do think it can be fast. It can produce impersonations, and maybe that's enough if you can get Spotify to put it on a playlist that gets out to, a bunch of listeners, because we know that there was drama over Spotify gaming playlists. There was accusations that they were putting, fake artists, non-existent artists into their playlists and getting, that's how they would game artists out of getting streaming money revenue.
Yep.
And they would take some of that. So like, I don't know the ins and outs of that enough to really go deep on it, but I know the playlist placement is important for these people, and that if you have an AI generating a bunch of music really quickly, you can make it so that they get a lot more impressions, as opposed to the artist who may have a higher quality of music. Because that's been the story of the game forever. Payola existed before there was streaming platforms. There was accusations that the artists are paying the radio stations to play their shit, So like, this is another version of it, but this is even crazier just to me because I feel like it can be a floodgate. Like you said, it's Pandora's box. This could be something that they actually use to think that they can replace a good artist. And for their end, it's like we don't have to worry about controversial statements. We don't got to worry about any accidents. They're not going to age out of a role. You know what I mean? They're not going to have contract disputes. So they're also looking at it from this is a very low maintenance way to produce if we can get similar results.
Exactly. And this is the part for me. That's a tool that's on behalf of the company, not the artist. Because if they can manage to pull that off, they just no longer have to deal with the artist. And why bother paying out royalties for a jingle or a sitcom license, or why pay out for that if you can AI it up and get something similar to what you were looking for? Might not be as great, but it does the job and it doesn't cost much. So that's
and if
kind of the worry.
And if the oversaturation gets to a certain point, because I think most people, or I think what people tend to have their determination be is like, well, AI music sucks, or you can always tell. But if you're completely oversaturated and 9 out of 10 things that you hear is some AI bullshit, at some point, if every time 9 out of 10 things is some bullshit, it's not gonna matter the one thing. You're gonna accept the least bullshit out of the other 9 too, because you don't want just one track. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way to make it feel normal.
That's a good point.
Like,
right?
shitification.
Back in the day, when they wanted a song to pop, sometimes songs would come out and they just weren't great right off the rip, but they would play that shit. And after, hearing it every day on the damn radio, when you're in your car or whatever, eventually you just start bopping along and singing the damn tune.
I want to say it's in the Power of Habit book where they talk about that. And it's actually a song that I think is a bop. Hey Ya by Outkast by Andre 3000, really. That was the song I think it was about. And maybe I'm having the wrong thing. I could have this totally wrong because I'm going off memory. I'll double check it so we could correct it. But it was like they did something called sandwiching, where they would play a really popular song, then they would put the hit song, which in this case I believe it was Hey Ya, and then they would play another really popular song in between, and it would keep the person on the station listening to it.
Yeah.
And it helped that song trigger like super pop.
Yeah,
explosion.
exactly. So
and I'm like that's a way that they used to try to sell stuff on radio.
Yeah. And here, here's what I want to say about this too. I follow a lot of hip hop heads, and I've just been watching the reactions come out. I would say probably 8 or 9 out of 10 that I've seen have been feelings of disappointment in this, which is kind of my first reaction too. Like to mention a few, I follow Carrying the Culture, Rob Markman, Demiza. I follow a bunch of dudes, and I can tell you what, like watching the Miza shit, he was super anti AI, but he did put out a post stating that he spoke with Timbaland and he kind of changed his mind a little bit, and essentially saying let's give it a shot, because the guy, he broke barriers in the past and he wasn't wrong then, maybe he won't be wrong now.
Yeah, he basically said Timbaland's never wrong, so how are you going to question him? But which I don't agree with, but I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Somebody who's been a pioneer of the sounds in the past, I
guess,
get it.
I guess the question, and why I started it by saying did Timbaland just open Pandora's box, is because if we end up at a place where 50% of the artists out there are no longer needed or can't get paid because AI is replacing them. This is like what we were worried about in, blue collar, white collar type certain jobs that are going to be going away. Mm-hmm. And, I never really dawned on me to think about that from the entertainment field, but here we are.
I always thought the artistry side would be a little tougher to crack, but it started with the AI art, and there was some stories about that, and now there's a lot of issues people have when people use AI art to replace, something that could be real somebody could be hired to create, and now we're seeing it here. One thing I will say, just to make it clear, the interview I mentioned, you can see that Timbaland is enthusiastic, and I feel he seems very authentic and sincere about his enthusiasm. I don't think that there's any ill intent or will from Timbaland. Like, it didn't come across to me. So I just want to send, like, it's not on some, oh, he's a sellout. No, it's just, it feels like a slippery slope situation to me, where this could turn into, even if Timbaland comes at it with an artist perspective, trying to put the artist first and all of that, there's going to be a shitload of copycats who potentially won't have that much interest in that. They're just looking to make the buck, to get more content out, and to flood things. Which is why I actually pulled up, like, this is an old article from Vulture, The Streaming Problem, How Spammers, Superstars, and Tech Giants Gamed the Music Industry. And it mentions, like, if you go on Spotify, there's rip-offs, there's things using titles that are misleading, there's all types of things that flood Spotify's playlists and search algos that could throw you off and make you listen to something different. And even if everything was copacetic on the other end, you're still going to have some fools using AI to put out some nonsense.
Yeah.
And just pump out so much of it with so many misleading titles that it just makes it worsens the platforms. It worsens finding music and discoverability. And it feels like it could be the first of a lot of headaches. And
yeah, I also, I wanted to just mention that a couple of years back, there was an AI artist that came out called FN Mecca. You remember that? This was a picture.
That picture is it makes me...
This was like an AI rapper that was signed to Capitol Music Group. And eventually ended up... He actually was doing great for a while. Then got dropped from the label. And I'll just read a statement from this article. This is actually from BBC News. It's an old article. Like I said, this was back 2022. A record label has cut ties with an AI rapper after criticism it contained racial stereotypes, including repeated use of the N-word. FN Mecca is an artificial intelligence musician given the appearance of a black male cyborg, but Capitol Music Group faced backlash for signing the rapper. In a statement announcing they had severed ties, CMG offered its deepest apologies to the black community for our insensitivity. FN Mecca currently has more than 500,000 monthly Spotify subscribers and more than 1 billion views on TikTok. So think about that. First of all, what the hell does it mean to sign an AI rapper? I don't know what that means. I got to look that up. And number two, they actually have to let the guy go, apparently, or the thing go. But look at that. Look at that. 500,000 subscribers on Spotify. And that's people taking the time to subscribe to the account, playing that music, running the music. I guess, I mean, if
who
that's...
owns the intellectual rights to the signed AI artist? Like, who did they sign him from?
Well, I have to maybe just take a peek at that. It's an old story, so maybe not. But yeah, so here we are again.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know. It feels like AI itself is Pandora's box, and Timbaland might have just kicked it open for the music.
Yeah,
world.
I don't know.
We'll see.
I'm more and more skeptical of things. I think just the quality of our media feels shitty sometimes. There have been horror movies that have come out recently that I'm like, if that was generated by AI, I wouldn't be surprised. It's so bad and so tropey and generic. And I don't know. It just feels like, again, I mentioned in shitification, that whole thing about, shit gets worse in this system. It's like, man, this feels like another example of that. Like, I like to get to know artists and have that, like, seeing them develop, become something more than what they started as, like, go on journeys with them and see how they become a different artist. Mac Miller's career is super dope to follow to me because of all the different developments and how I think he evolved as a rapper and producer across his career. And there's a ton of different stories like that. Watching Kendrick go from the Section 8 mixtape to where he is now to Not Like Us, that is a really dope journey to have been able to watch the whole thing. And that goes back to people who had the Streets is Watching VHS tape when Jay-Z first gets started to where he goes.
Yeah,
it's cool to see
exactly.
those journeys. It's cool to see a rapper like Nas put out albums as a mature grown man and compare them and see him looking back on a whole career. And I just don't know that that's even possible with some AI generated artist.
Yeah,
Doesn't even have a last name. Tata. It's just
that's actually a really good point. There's no backstory to your AI artists or any of them for that matter. I guess maybe the idea is to try to build one, but I don't know, because
it's literally artificial.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but I'm trying to think about Timbaland's statement, which is something like, this was an autonomous. There was a way he put it, but it's hard for me to see it that the way he was trying to explain it, because in the end, for me, it's still AI, man.
Yeah. I already feel bugged out when I hear stories about who's been ghostwriters and how long they were stuck being ghostwriters before they blew up in the music industry. And I feel like now you're just never even going to have a shot. If you're Bruno Mars writing a bunch of hits for other people, that's your career now. You're never going to have the Bruno Mars glow up,
Yeah, well, the thing with AI now is that it can analyze Bruno Mars lyrics and writing style.
Really
and write you something
half-assed
similar.
impersonation.
So, anyway, let's leave it at that for the Timbaland story. Thank you for tuning in.